Have you ever thought about how quickly an ordinary moment can twist into something unrecognizable? How, in the space of a few heartbeats, the world you thought was safe can turn into something dark, something irreversible? Imagine yourself on a tropical island where the air is thick with the scent of salt and jasmine, where the ocean hums a gentle rhythm against the shore. The kind of place where time slows, where worries seem to dissolve into the waves. But not everything is as it seems, because even in paradise, something can be watching, something can be waiting. On April 7th, 2019, such a deceptive calm graced the life of Miriam Bielt, a young tourist from Germany with dreams as vibrant as the island itself. That morning, Miriam set out for what was meant to be a soul-soothing walk to a centuries-old temple nestled deep within the heart of Koh Chang. Her itinerary promised quiet reflection and the kind of simple joy that vacationers seek on remote islands. Security cameras later captured her in these blissful early hours, a smiling, carefree traveler embarking on a journey that, unbeknownst to her, would soon descend into an unfathomable mystery. Koh Chang, with its legendary reputation for tranquility and untouched beauty, might seem the last place for turmoil to arise. The island is a living mosaic of turquoise waters, powdery white beaches, and sprawling jungles that have guarded their secrets through the ages. Into this peaceful enclave stepped Miriam, blending business with a long-awaited escape from the relentless pace of modern life. But as the golden afternoon waned, the atmosphere began to thicken with an inexplicable tension, a tension that would eventually cloak her disappearance in a shroud of perplexity and dread. There was nothing overtly out of the ordinary about Miriam's visit. A graduate of the University of Hanover, she had quickly established herself as a design engineer in a leading company, a testament to her ambition and success. Her career often demanded long hours and extensive travel, yet this particular trip had carried a different promise. After fulfilling her business obligations, Miriam chose to extend her stay on the secluded island. Drawn irresistibly to its pristine white sands and crystal-clear waters, a dream she had harbored for years. Her decisions were typically marked by prudence and careful planning, not the heedless abandon that might invite danger. The calm was brutally shattered when Miriam failed to appear for breakfast on the day she was scheduled to depart. At first, it was an innocent anomaly, merely an unusual delay in her routine. However, as time ticked by with no word from her and her phone remained ominously unreachable, an unsettling realization began to take root. The hotel staff's initial concern gave way to mounting anxiety, and it wasn't long before her unexplained absence was formally reported to the local authorities. Despite early assumptions that this might be a minor hiccup in an otherwise routine vacation, it soon became evident that something far more sinister was at play. Official records detailed her journey to Thailand for business, noting that her meetings with suppliers had proceeded without a hitch. Miriam was known among her colleagues for her occasional habit of extending work trips to enjoy some solitary downtime, even if it meant venturing alone into unknown territories. Yet, even as friends recalled her adventurous spirit, they emphasized that she was never one to flirt with reckless behavior. Her curiosity was tempered by a careful, calculated approach to travel. So how could such a measured, vibrant soul vanish into thin air amidst the tranquility of Koh Chang? Locals later recalled that Miriam Bielt had taken a particular interest in Koh Chang's untouched corners, the places where the world seemed to disappear. She had asked tour guides about hidden beaches, those secret pockets of paradise where the sand remained undisturbed, where solitude wrapped around you like a warm embrace. It was an unusual curiosity for someone so meticulous, so structured. Miriam wasn't the type to take spontaneous risks. Every step of her trip had been carefully planned, every destination chosen with purpose. But this time, something drew her off the well-trodden path, and that path would lead her straight into the unknown. After completing her business meetings in Bangkok, Miriam had taken a brief detour to Pattaya before making her way to Koh Chang. The journey was supposed to be simple, a few days of sun, sand, and the serenity she craved. An early morning ferry carried her across the waters, the island's lush green hills rising in the distance like a dream. The moment she arrived, her precision took over. Without hesitation, she rented a motorbike, checked her maps, and followed the route she had outlined long before setting foot in Thailand. But among the beaches and viewpoints, one destination stood out: a centuries-old temple perched high above the jungle. It was a place few tourists visited, accessible only by a steep, winding staircase carved into the rock. A place of quiet reflection, hidden deep within Koh Chang's dense wilderness. That morning, as the sun bathed the island in golden light, Miriam set off. She rode through the narrow roads, past sleepy villages and towering palms, until she reached the temple's base. There, nestled beside the entrance, stood a small flower stall. The vendor, an elderly woman, greeted her with a warm smile as she carefully arranged bundles of fresh jasmine. Miriam paused, exchanged a few words, and bought a small bouquet, perhaps as an offering, perhaps simply for the beauty of it. Surveillance footage later captured her last known moments. A lone traveler ascending the steep stone steps, a bottle of water in her hand, a small backpack slung over her shoulders. Her expression was calm, peaceful, as if she had no idea she was about to disappear. Hours slipped by, and the sun dipped toward the horizon. Yet Miriam did not return. Her rented motorbike remained exactly where she had left it, its presence a silent, eerie testament to her absence. The flower stall had long since closed for the day, its owner gone, but the island's quiet air now carried an unsettling weight. It wasn't until the following morning that concern turned to alarm. The vendor, recalling the young woman who had climbed the steps but never came back down, reported her missing. At first, authorities treated it as a simple case of a delayed tourist. Perhaps she had gotten lost in the jungle or decided to extend her visit. But as investigators traced her movements, unease began to creep in. Miriam was not someone who acted recklessly. She was a seasoned traveler who followed a strict personal code. No unnecessary risks, no interactions with strangers, no wandering off without informing someone. She had planned a single-day excursion to the temple, a brief visit to capture photos, have lunch, and return to the mainland. She had even scheduled messages with her family, check-ins that she never missed. But on April 7th, at exactly noon, those messages stopped. By evening, it was as if she had vanished into thin air. The temple Miriam set out for that morning was no ordinary place. Tucked deep within Koh Chang's untamed jungle, it was shrouded in mystery, rarely visited, even by locals. No road signs pointed the way, and no glossy travel brochures dared to mention it. It was a destination spoken of in passing, a relic swallowed by time and nature. Security footage would later show Miriam alone as she started her ascent, just a small figure in a vast, unforgiving wilderness. She moved with quiet confidence, her expression calm, almost serene. There was no hesitation, no sign of fear. If she sensed that something, or someone, was watching her from the shadows, she didn't show it. It was the last time anyone saw her alive. Investigators would replay the footage over and over, searching for anything they might have missed. But the jungle swallowed its secrets whole. Beyond that brief glimpse of her on the trail, time seemed to stop, leaving nothing but questions in its wake. And then came a lead. During interviews with locals, a cafe worker near the pier recalled something unsettling. A few days before Miriam vanished, she had been seen there, sitting across from a man no one recognized. Their conversation seemed comfortable, familiar. Had they met on the ferry? At her hotel? No one knew. He wasn't a tourist. He wasn't a local. And after that meeting, he was never seen with her again. Had she trusted the wrong person? Had he been following her? April 8th, 2019. Ko Chang awoke under a thick veil of heat and humidity. In the early hours of the morning, before the island stirred to life, a Thai tourist set out for a quiet hike, hoping to enjoy the crisp jungle air. The trail was empty, silent, eerily so. Then, something caught his eye. A shape. Something pale, unnatural, wedged between the rocks near a small ravine just off the path. At first, he thought it was a piece of discarded fabric caught in the undergrowth. But as he stepped closer, the truth sent ice through his veins. It was a body, a young woman crumpled between the stones, half hidden beneath hastily arranged branches and leaves, as if someone had tried, poorly, to make her disappear. Blood stained the nearby ground. Her skin, drained of color, stood in sharp contrast to the dark jungle floor. The hiker's breath came in short gasps. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone, dialing emergency services. Within an hour, police swarmed the scene. By midday, the island buzzed with whispers, rumors swirling like storm clouds. By nightfall, the world would know her name: Miriam Bealty. Back in Germany, panic had already taken hold. Miriam was the kind of traveler who never went off the grid. Not like this. She was careful, responsible, always in touch. When her messages abruptly stopped on the evening of April 7th, her parents had tried not to think the worst. By morning, they could no longer ignore the dread settling in their bones. A missing person report was filed. And then, just hours later, the news arrived. Her body had been found. Investigators worked quickly to retrace her final steps. She had planned to leave Ko Chang that night, catching the last ferry back to the mainland. But she never made it. Her rented motorbike remained exactly where she had left it, parked at the base of the jungle trail, waiting for an owner who would never return. A silent witness to the moment her fate was sealed. The initial theory was simple: a tragic accident. Perhaps Miriam had slipped on the slick, moss-covered trail, tumbling down into the ravine where her body was found. But as investigators examined the scene, that explanation fell apart. The injuries on her body, deep bruises, jagged cuts, told a different story, one of struggle, violence, and fear. This was no accident. It was murder. And it was brutal. Even more horrifying, forensic evidence suggested that Miriam had been assaulted before her death, a revelation that darkened the case even further. The peaceful image of a young traveler hiking alone, enjoying the beauty of the island, was now overshadowed by something sinister, something lurking just beyond the reach of the security cameras. The investigation intensified. Detectives scoured hours of surveillance footage, desperate to reconstruct her final moments. At the base of the trail, one of the cameras captured a crucial clue. Miriam appeared on screen, moving with confidence, carrying a small backpack and a bottle of water. There was no sign of distress, no hesitation. She climbed the stone steps and disappeared around a bend. Seconds later, another figure emerged from the shadows. A man. Dressed in dark clothing, he followed the same path Miriam had taken, his pace steady, deliberate. He never looked at the camera, never hesitated. And when he returned, his clothes were damp and stained with something pale, something that caught the investigators' attention. But that wasn't all. A flower stall vendor near the trail's entrance recalled seeing him earlier that day. He had arrived on a motorbike, bought a bouquet of marigolds, and then followed Miriam up the trail. At the time, it hadn't seemed suspicious. Pilgrims often brought flowers to the temple. It was what happened next that unsettled the vendor. The man returned alone. His demeanor drastically changed. He looked nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot, his gaze darting around as if he expected someone to be watching. When asked about the stains on his clothes, he muttered something about slipping on the trail. But there was something off, something in the way he spoke, in the way his hands fidgeted. Instinct told the vendor that something was wrong, so he did something most people wouldn't have thought to do. He wrote down the man's license plate number. That small act turned out to be the key that cracked the case wide open. Within hours, police traced the motorbike to its owner, a man named Ricorn, 24 years old, a local resident, a ghost of a man who drifted through the island, unnoticed by most. He worked as a beach cleaner, but lived in a rundown house on the farthest edge of the island, a place where even the locals rarely ventured. When officers arrived at his home, they found the door locked, the windows dark. Ricorn was gone, and so the hunt began. Neighbors described him as odd, reclusive. He barely spoke. Some believed he was simply a loner, a man lost in his own world. But others whispered about his erratic behavior, the sudden outbursts, the glazed look in his eyes when he wandered the island aimlessly, as though searching for something only he could see. But what was he searching for that morning? What had led him to Miriam? And why did he follow her? The events of April 7th, 2019 began like any other day. The island was still, wrapped in the golden hush of early morning. But inside Ricorn's crumbling house, there was no peace. He had barely slept. His mind, already fractured, had been further clouded by the effects of alcohol and drugs. Bottles littered the floor, their contents long emptied in an attempt to quiet the chaos in his head. But it hadn't worked, not this time. Restless, agitated, his body trembled from withdrawals, from the weight of thoughts he couldn't control. The usual escape, cheap beer, a few shots of something stronger, wasn't enough. His mind needed more. So he reached for it. A higher dose, a stronger substance. The effect was immediate. His world twisted, distorting reality. His thoughts scattered, jumping from one fragmented idea to another. But through the haze, one thing became clear. He needed to get out, to find something, someone. He climbed onto his motorbike, his vision still swimming, and rode toward the trail. He didn't know where he was going, not at first. But then he saw her. A lone figure at the base of the temple trail. She moved with an effortless grace, the morning sun catching in her light hair as she adjusted the straps of her small backpack. Her posture was relaxed, her pace unhurried, completely unaware of the eyes that now fixated on her. Ron slowed his bike to a stop, his pulse spiking with a strange, electric anticipation. Something inside him shifted, sharpening into intent. He watched her begin her ascent, and then, without truly deciding to, he followed. Before heading up the trail, he made a calculated stop at a nearby flower stall, his movements abrupt and jerky. The vendor observed him warily, sensing something off in the way his vacant eyes remained disturbingly intense. Ron bought a bouquet of marigolds without a word, clutching them too tightly as he set off after her. He wasn't sure why he had done it. Perhaps he thought it would make his approach seem innocent. Perhaps it was just another impulse he couldn't control. Up ahead, Miriam continued her climb, relishing the stillness of the trail, the distant hum of cicadas, the scent of damp earth. This trip had been her escape, a much-needed break after months of stress. She had traveled before, she knew how to be cautious, but some dangers couldn't be anticipated. Some horrors couldn't be seen coming. Behind her, the sound of approaching footsteps barely registered at first. Then, a voice. She turned to see a man holding out a bouquet of flowers. His expression was unreadable, his gaze unsettlingly direct. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" he said, his tone too casual, too forced. Miriam hesitated but remained polite, nodding and offering a reserved smile. The flowers confused her. An odd gesture from a stranger. She declined them gently, thanked him, and turned to walk on. But he didn't leave. He followed. At first, it was subtle, his pace matching hers, his presence a shadow just outside her periphery. But then his voice returned, now edged with something darker. "You should join me. I know a spot off the trail. Quiet. No one around." Miriam's body tensed. Her instincts screamed at her to get away. "No, thank you," she said, firm now, quickening her steps. But Ron wasn't asking. His hand lashed out, fingers locking around her wrist, yanking her backward with startling force. Panic surged through her as she fought, twisting against his grip. But he was stronger. The struggle carried them off the path, into the thick vegetation, where the shadows swallowed them whole. No one heard her screams. Hours later, when police arrived at the scene, the brutality of what had taken place was undeniable. The disturbed earth, the torn foliage, the silent body lying where she had tried so desperately to escape. This was no accident. This was a deliberate act of violence. Down at the base of the trail, the flower stall vendor watched as the same man from earlier reappeared, his clothes damp and streaked with pale stains. Something was different now. His movements were twitchy, his hands shaking as he wiped them down his pant legs. The vendor asked if he was okay. Ron barely met his gaze, mumbling something about slipping on the rocks before hurriedly leaving. Suspicion gnawed at the vendor. He had seen many tourists come and go, but something about this man, this moment, felt wrong. So, on a gut instinct, he wrote down the motorbike's license plate. By nightfall, Ron was back in his house. He stripped off his stained clothes, scrubbing them furiously under running water, but the marks wouldn't disappear. The smell of damp earth still clung to him, sinking into his skin. He sank onto the couch, flicking on the TV as if that could somehow return things to normal. But normal was gone. And when the police knocked on his door, Ron didn't run. He didn't fight. It was as if, deep down, he had been waiting for this moment all along. During questioning, Ron initially tried to mislead investigators, weaving a web of lies to obscure the truth. However, his version of events quickly unraveled, and he eventually provided a full account of what had transpired. His confession was deeply unsettling, a horrifying crime set against the serene backdrop of the island. But his admission alone wasn't enough. Authorities needed to piece together the precise sequence of events, leading them to conduct a reenactment. With his face concealed to avoid public attention, Ron was taken back to the crime scene. Step by step, he retraced his movements, demonstrating exactly what he had done. Investigators scrutinized his every action, ensuring no crucial detail was overlooked. The reenactment sent chills through those present, but it solidified the authorities' understanding of what had occurred on that fateful day. As Ron's trial commenced, it became a pivotal moment for Thailand's justice system. Miriam's murder had sent shockwaves not only through the local community but across the world, raising urgent concerns about the safety of tourists in destinations like Koh Chang. The case attracted intense media scrutiny, with journalists, both local and international, following every development. The prosecution presented irrefutable evidence, surveillance footage, testimony from the flower vendor, and Ron's own confession. These key pieces painted a clear picture of how he had stalked Miriam, attempted to engage her in conversation, and ultimately lured her to a secluded spot where he carried out the attack. Despite his admission of guilt, the courtroom remained heavy with tension. The brutality of the crime unsettled even seasoned reporters. Yet some of the most emotional moments occurred outside the proceedings. Ron's mother made a sudden and unexpected appearance, triggering mixed reactions. She did not seek to defend her son's actions, but rather to comprehend how he had become capable of such violence. Addressing Miriam's family and the local community, she expressed deep remorse, admitting that she and Ron had been estranged for years. She revealed that she had been unaware of his struggles with substance abuse, though she knew her words could not undo the horror he had inflicted. In the end, she pleaded with the court for the harshest possible sentence, acknowledging that her son had lost control of his life and posed a grave threat to others. Ron displayed no remorse. He offered no apology, no explanation, just a detached, emotionless recounting of events, as if narrating someone else's story. The trial progressed swiftly, and within 3 months of the horrific crime, the court delivered its verdict. Ron was sentenced to death, with his attorney's pleas for leniency failing in the face of overwhelming evidence and public outrage. The brutality of his actions left no room for mercy. One of the most heartbreaking moments of the trial came when his mother spoke. Her grief, her anguish, and the painful realization that she had lost her son, not just physically, but morally, left a lasting impression on everyone in the courtroom. She admitted that she feared what he might do if ever given the chance to walk free again. Watching her son taken away in chains was an unbearable final farewell. She understood then that he was no longer the boy she had raised. He had become someone unrecognizable. That realization was the cruelest punishment of all. In the aftermath of the verdict, the island of Ko Chang struggled to heal. Once celebrated for its peaceful landscapes and welcoming community, it was now marked by a crime so horrifying that its impact was felt across the country. Locals, deeply proud of their hospitality and culture, felt the weight of the tragedy as it cast a shadow over their home. They refused to let this moment define them, hoping it would remain an isolated horror rather than a permanent stain on the island's identity. In an act of mourning and solidarity, they placed flowers and candles at the site where Miriam's life had been taken, a silent tribute to her memory and a vow that such cruelty would never be tolerated again. But this tragedy did more than shock the community. It exposed uncomfortable truths. It forced conversations about tourist safety, the hidden dangers lurking beneath the island's beauty, and the ease with which substance abuse could lead to violence. Authorities moved quickly to reassure both residents and visitors that Ko Chang remained a safe destination, but doubt lingered. Officials promised that such an atrocity would never happen again, but could they truly guarantee it? Miriam Belt's story remains one of the most haunting tragedies in Ko Chang's history. In her honor, Hanover University established a scholarship for aspiring engineers, ensuring that her passion for learning would live on. Yet for those who loved her, the pain of her absence is a wound that will never fully heal. And so, as you plan your next journey, ask yourself, what can truly ensure that such a tragedy won't happen again? How can we ever be certain that a dream vacation won't turn into a nightmare? Even the most breathtaking places can conceal darkness just beneath the surface. As you travel, remember, beauty can sometimes hide the most unsettling truths.